Dead Space. What a cool name for a video game. The OG for this classic came out in 2008, and having never played this myself, I thought it was time to jump in after noticing it was on EA Play's subscription library. With an 89 on Metacritic and an expected 40-hour platinum, I was keen as ever to make this my 130th platinum trophy. The plan was to do 3 separate playthroughs. Playthrough 1. Finish the game and collect 150 logs while focusing on weapon kills. So starting up the game, we skipped the EULA because we don't read that shit, and we set the game to medium difficulty. This was to get a balanced experience and to get a feel for how tough our eventual impossible playthrough will be. I have to admit, I'm not much into sci-fi myself, but the premise for this game is actually really cool. The year is 2508. We play as engineer Isaac Clarke, played by Adam Sandler, and we're accompanied by a small team on a repair mission for the Ishimura. The Ishimura is a mining vessel, a huge ship called a planet cracker that literally destroys planets to harvest its resources. As we try to dock onto the Ishimura, the gravity tether malfunctions and we crash. Everyone survives, so we go to sign in on the Ishimura and mysteriously nobody is around to greet us. A damage report tells us that half of the Ishimura is damaged when suddenly the lobby kicks into quarantine mode. We get jumped by some monsters and they kill our only Asian dude, Chen. After narrowly making our escape, we spot some bloody writing on the wall that says cut off their limbs. This reminded me of the 2022 game The Callisto Protocol and my 98th platinum trophy. We pick up our very first weapon, and objectively the best weapon in the game, the plasma cutter. After turning up the game's brightness to make the game slightly less scary, we get our first kill. The team notice that the monsters were formerly crew members and we get to work repairing a tram that is blocking our path. We find a stasis module that allows us to slow down time and pin a relevant trophy. I really like the atmosphere the game creates with its audio logs. I also love the heft of Isaac's stomps and the gore. Like, don't open the boxes with your hands like a normal person. Nah, break the shit out of it with your foot. It doesn't make sense, but it's still awesome. Fixing the tram required us to reroute power, which of course meant killing all the lights. And it was around this time we popped our cherry with the marksman trophy for dismembering 50 limbs. We found the components for the tram and started working on the backbreaker trophy for stomp killing 10 enemies. At least that's what I thought I was doing, but apparently it only counts on certain enemies, so more on that later. After calling in the tram, we scoot back over to the Kellyan, which is the shuttle we crashed, and informed Haley about the monsters. Suddenly we get attacked and we lose Haley along with the Kellyan. We sold some items in the store so we could buy the level 2 suit upgrade, and then we were off to the medical department to scavenge the Ishimura captain's rig. This would increase our security clearance. We began stomping corpses just in case they came back as monsters. I don't know if that was a real concern, but it was better to be safe than sorry. We also had our first death because I was too much of a tight ass to spend money on medpacks. And that was chapter 1 complete. The start of chapter 2 gave us the kinesis ability, and at this point I realised just how Bioshock this game is with its abilities, audio logs, and the exploration of an abandoned space. We then came across a lass who was sporting a really nice pulse rifle. Sadly she died, but on an unrelated note we found a really nice pulse rifle. Dead Space really goes hard with its jump scares and cool zero gravity moments. After stomping what felt like the 20th enemy, I was beginning to get a little confused why we weren't getting the backbreaker trophy for stomping 10. So I consulted the trophy guide, and as it turns out you had to stomp kill an enemy in one hit, so the description could have been a little better. We ended up getting trophy 3 shortly after for pinning an enemy. This was an accidental pop and I love when that happens. We witnessed someone getting murked by a new enemy, which is this kind of possessed creepy tentacle baby. Fucking horrifying, man. So we booted it across the room and shot it without hesitation. That's right, Dead Space makes you kill babies. We blow up a barricade that was blocking our path and started a trophy-related side mission involving the events of Isaac's partner, Dr. Nicole Brennan. Returning to the main mission, the game also has a habit of spit roasting you between 2 or more Necromorphs, which had me worried for my future impossible playthrough. And I also keep hearing about this thing called the marker. We push on and stumble across someone in desperate need of attention, and finally find the corpse of the captain, but just as we try to detach his rig, a flying monster swoops down and infects the body, which transforms him into a necromorph right on top of us. We swiftly take care of business and pilfer the captain's rig, thus updating our security clearance. Then we return to the hangar which ended chapter 2. Chapter 3 had us trying to get the Ishimura's engines back online, which meant hitting up the refueling stations. We also had acquired a shit ton of nodes, so I plugged them into the rifle, working towards trophy for every weapon upgrade. And to be honest, at this point the game was beginning to feel a little predictable. Anytime you were confined to an area or activate something, you were reliably trapped with some enemies. Our next trophy came when we were trying to get a centrifuge online. We got jumped by a legless monster and managed to pop the autofire trophy for 30 rifle kills. Trophy 6 came shortly after for killing 30 enemies with the Ripper. And Trophy 7 also popped after restarting the engines and ending chapter 3. Now it was time to make our way to the bridge to work on fixing the ADS cannons. This was because the Ishimura was currently in a debris field caused by the mining operation, and it would decimate us unless we had defenses. There was also some in-house fighting between our boss Hammond and our computer specialist Daniels, as she was convinced that Hammond was secretly here for the marker thing.
Isn't that why you're really here?
And how does losing my team fit into this theory?
Hey, knock this shit off.
We linked up with the captain who captured the now Necromorph Chen, the guy who was killed at the start of the game, and yeeted him off the ship in an escape pod. We also started another side mission which involved finding crew members' rigs in order to create a master override and subscribe to this channel. Trophy number 8 was Brute Force, where we had to kill a brute. Normally the strat is to use stasis on it and then run around to shoot the weak spots on its back, but for some reason this guy was like, here, here's a trophy, and offed himself. We then found the contact beam, but for now I was going to stick with the flamethrower until I get enough kills for that trophy before moving on. When hunting for trophies, I do like to play systematically like that. We stumble across a strange room with markings on the floor, a video image of an artifact, as well as a text log about the Church of Unitology. It turns out a new religion had spread over the past 200 years that revolves around an alien artifact called the Marker, and some secret to eternal life hidden by the government. The marking on the floor was a secret puzzle where we had to perform melee and stomp attacks in the order it was written. It's a goofy puzzle, but it gave us a text log to read. There was also a second combination that unlocks a pretty catchy sea shanty. Trophy 9 was Backbreaker. This was the trophy for stomp killing 10 enemies, which was made easy by stasising and crushing the small critters that fell out of this pregnant enemy type. I guess the creators of Dead Space really hate babies. While venturing outside to recalibrate the ADS's targeting systems, we also popped Trophy 10 for using stasis 50 times on enemies. The final objective for Chapter 4 was to ensure the system tracked and destroyed floating rocks. A thing I noticed and appreciated is how the game maintains its tension. There's always a chance an enemy can spawn into a room you've already explored. Trophy 12 is for getting 30 flamethrower kills, and the next story beat had us chasing a signal from Isaac's missus from the medical lab. But as it turns out, we were gaslit by none other than Dr. Mercer, a deranged unitologist. This man had been experimenting on humans. We tried to fight off this new monster called the Hunter, but little did I know I would waste all of my precious contact energy on this invincible mofo who just kept regenerating. So we ran away, and I popped a trophy for collecting 75 logs. We then got to speak to a corpse who informed us that the air in the hydroponics department was being poisoned. And then we ran away from the Hunter again and acted quickly to clear the air. We arrived at cryogenics, have a chat to Mercer, and learn that his grand plan is to bring these monsters to infect planet Earth. A boss fight ensues and we manage to trap the Hunter using liquid nitrogen, and that completes Chapter 5. So the next threat was a giant monster called the Leviathan. We end up crafting an enzyme syringe that is supposed to help us weaken the creature, and a scientist named Elizabeth Cross informs us that the best way to do this is to inject her former teammates who are directly connected to the Leviathan. So off we went. Killing 30 enemies with the line gun gave us the Eviscerator trophy, and picking up the final weapon Force Gun gave us Trophy 16. We also popped Trophy 17 for killing 30 enemies with a contact beam. I find that these small critters are a great way to boost kill numbers, so I switched weapons to the Force Gun to get a good start on that one. As we approached our first Wheezer, we gently administer the enzyme and it worked really fast. Took us a while, but there were 8 Wheezers in total we had to inject. And then we got Trophy 18 for dismembering 500 limbs. It was time to face the Leviathan. It took me a few attempts because it wasn't exactly clear if I was dealing any damage to the core during the second phase. But we did the deed and ejected that bitch into space, which ended the chapter. With that threat out of the way, our next objective was to send an SOS distress signal from the mining deck, and it was there that we popped Trophy 21 for killing 30 enemies with a force gun. This was the last of the combat trophies. One of the most disturbing parts of the game came when we picked up a gruesome audio log from the supervisor. Resigned to his fate, he decides to shoot off his own limbs so that he doesn't turn. You can find what's left of his corpse in the mineral processing area. Shortly after, we meet Nicole for the first time face to face. And she seemed a little strange, not gonna lie. But she points us to the SOS beacon, and we earned the Pack Rat trophy for putting 25 items in storage. Trying to launch the SOS beacon was a failure, so the contingency plan was to attach the beacon on top of a freaking asteroid and launch that instead. So maybe it's just me, but I struggled a bit trying to figure out how to destroy the gravity tethers. After looking up a video, I found out you actually had to go outside into the coldness of space to complete the objective. The tethers were destroyed and the asteroid was launched. We get jumped by the Hunter again, but dealing with him is easy. You just hit him with stasis and chop off his legs to slow him down. And that was the end of Chapter 7. It didn't take long for someone to reply to the SOS message, but Kendra tells us that we cannot communicate until the comms array was repaired. Now there aren't a whole lot of puzzles in Dead Space, but this one was rather annoying. It turns out that the USM Valor received our SOS and replied with a message that was playing on loop. Apparently they intercepted one of our escape pods. Remember when Hammond ejected Chen? What are the chances? We needed to warn these guys, but the long-range antenna appeared to be blocked by something. Turns out the Leviathan was alive and causing the antenna blockage.
I can shoot it right off the hull. I got this. You focus on the Valor.
Isaac keeps throwing himself into these suicide missions. Like, dude, you're just an engineer. Calm down. We quickly dispatch the remnants of the Leviathan and pop Trophy 24, get off my ship. We activate the antenna, but it turns out it was too late for the USM Valor. The whole crew was taken out and the ship was headed straight for us. Hammond tells us that he found a shuttle we could use, but it was missing something called a singularity core. Isaac says he can salvage one from the USM Valor, and so off we went. While on board the infected ship, we discovered that it was housing a nuke that was designed for the Ishimura, so we dropped that bad boy. The next trophy was earned for surviving the optional shooting gallery. And then we got another one for collecting all of the schematics. We caught up with Hammond, who was also on the Valor, but he met an untimely end when Chen popped out and I witnessed a heroic murder-suicide. We remove the singularity core and make it off the ship just before it implodes. It was also time to wrap up the side mission for collecting the rigs and use them to create a master override which gave us Trophy 29 full clearance. This gave us access to a room with a final audio log from crazy Dr. Mercer. It details the genesis of the hunter who was a patient Mercer was experimenting on. Trophy 31 was for collecting 150 logs, and Trophy 32 was for completing a little minigame. Back to the main story. We then picked up a crew deck keycard because our goal was to reach an executive shuttle with a singularity core to get off the Ishimura. On the way, we catch Mercer fighting with engineer Jacob Temple. Isaac gets a little emotional and says some spicy things, which causes Mercer to shoot Temple in the back of the head.
You and your marker can go to hell. No! God damn it!
We then get dropped on by the hunter once again. Now we come across a bit of backstory. A strange conversation on monitors between Isaac and Nicole suggests that Isaac's mother was a Unitology nut who shot her husband before shooting herself. And in the back room of one of the suites, we pick up the last recording for a side mission in relation to the hunter's regenerative powers. So now we meet Dr. Kine, and he explains to us that this outbreak was caused because the artifact known as the Marker was taken from planet Aegis 7, the planet being mined. He tells Isaac if he uses the shuttle and returns the Marker to the planet, it will end the outbreak, and Isaac agrees to it. We retrieve the Marker, but then we face off with the hunter once again. This time we end him once and for all by luring him behind the shuttle's engines and burn him. Mercer gets dragged away by a tentacle, and we pop Trophy 34 Keeper of the Faith for completing Chapter 10. As we move into the penultimate chapter of the game, we find an object called a peng. This unlocked Trophy 35, there's always a peng, which I guess is some kind of inside joke. Anyway, we move the Marker to the hangar bay for transportation. So it turns out Kendra, who was helping us this whole time, is actually an EarthGov agent. She shoots Kine and takes off in the shuttle with the Marker, but not before revealing her true identity to Isaac. She explains that the Marker is a man-made replica and plans to relocate it. Nicole hits us up, and we meet her in flight control with an escape plan. We are able to recall the shuttle using the remote pilot, and Kendra uses an escape pod before we can get to her. I always had my suspicions about Nicole, like always telling us she wants to be made whole or whatever the fuck.
You can make us whole again.
And even the way she moves her body is like really weird. But whatever, we pushed on. We hit the game's point of no return, and Nicole and Isaac ride the shuttle. Isaac has several blackouts, and somehow we find ourselves on Aegis 7. In the final chapter of the game now, we unload the Marker and transport it. Nicole keeps repeating, make us whole.
Make us whole.
The writers really wanted to beat us over the head with that. And Isaac has proven to be a smart dude but doesn't ask any questions? Moving obstructions in the game was getting really old at this point, and I just wanted to get to the conclusion. As we bring the Marker to its destination, Kendra Daniels drops in, and finally the big not so secret reveal is revealed. After a lengthy video log, it turns out Nicole killed herself after things turned to shit. Yeah. She just kills herself in a video and sends it to her partner. The Marker was making Isaac see Nicole, when in actuality it was Elizabeth Cross this whole time. Daniels kills Cross, and as the gravity tethers are failing, intends to allow all the shit that was mined to fall down and destroy the Marker along with Aegis 7. As the planet is about to be destroyed, we rush off back to the shuttle, and Daniels is killed by the hive mind. We face off against the final boss of the game, which is largely uninteresting, and make it back to the shuttle as the only survivor. The last shot sees Isaac coming to terms with everything that just happened as the dead Nicole attacks him before cutting to black. This nets us 3 trophies for killing the hive mind, completing the game on medium difficulty, and completing chapter 12 on any difficulty. Total completion time for the first playthrough was approximately 18.5 hours. That includes getting lost a bunch of times, looking at a collectible guide, and idling in the pause menu while taking notes. The next step was to replay the game in New Game Plus using only the plasma cutter for a very specific trophy. We set the difficulty to story mode to speed up the runtime, and I had to double check that kinesis kills would not invalidate the trophy. Unfortunately, they did not. In Dead Space Remake, they also added 12 new collectibles called marker fragments, and these can be found in each of the chapters. A really cool Easter egg is if you take the first letter from every chapter, it spells out Nicole is dead. As annoying as second playthroughs are, there's a certain comfort that comes with the familiarity of knowing everything that is about to happen. There was also the ease of not worrying about many collectibles, but I did have to keep collecting nodes in order to fully upgrade all of my weapons. I wish I got to know you better, Chen. It felt OP playing on story mode with a fully upgraded plasma cutter, and it took out all of the fear from the game. We popped our 40th trophy for collecting the first marker fragment, and upgraded the suit to level 6, which looked fire, and popped a trophy for installing all weapon mods. This was the 12th and final marker fragment. With this, we were able to make our way to the executive crew deck to set up the alternate ending, which I believe was not in the OG Dead Space. And here are all the marker fragments. We went to a store and sold almost everything I had to buy nodes, and popped maxed out for fully upgrading all equipment. We beat the hive mind again and popped 3 trophies: Trusted Contractor, 1 Gun, and Reunion. It took a little over 7 hours. The alternate ending was confusing to me. Not sure what it tells us, but he does look a lot like Adam Sandler, doesn't he? And all there was to do was complete the game one more time on impossible difficulty. On this setting, we were limited to 1 save slot, and any death meant the difficulty would revert down to hard mode, which would invalidate the untouchable trophy. The only other trophy that was needed was one called Wishbone. Surprisingly, I hadn't gotten this one naturally after 2 playthroughs. All I needed to do was rip off a dangling limb with kinesis. I found this useful video that showed me you could earn this trophy oddly enough if you pull on a random suit. So there's that, and for the impossible run, I ended up sticking with the plasma cutter, contact beam, pulse rifle, and force gun. Peeling the skin off enemies with the force gun was sick. And impossible was actually pretty easy. There was really only one sticking point for me, and that was after killing the hunter. You get grabbed by a tentacle and you need to shoot its weak point before you get taken away. I had to redo that part several times because I found out the only weapon strong enough to do that was my plasma cutter. The total runtime for my impossible playthrough was about 8.5 hours, which makes the total time to platinum roughly 35 hours. So final thoughts about Dead Space Remake. As someone who never played the original, I thought this was a well executed video game with a really cool premise for a story. The pacing was good and the game design was creative. Like the fact that the developers decided you had to shoot the limbs off instead of the head is the exact inverse of every horror game that came before it. I like the simple things like floating clips and zero gravity, or how the game always rewards you by giving you loot on every dead enemy you stomp on. The only downside I think was the navigation. Each section is cleverly designed to funnel you through a maze that ends up joining back onto itself, but trying to decipher the map was a headache. I spent much time getting lost, especially when trying to backtrack to rooms I had no security clearance for. In terms of the trophy list, there was a good combination of combat trophies without any real missables you need to worry about. I usually hate having to replay games, so doing it 3 times became a bit of a chore, but it also gave me the opportunity to understand the story on a deeper level. And the difficulty wasn't too bad, so the Platinum Hunt was a good experience overall. For people who enjoy horror games, I would highly recommend considering the Dead Space Remake Platinum, especially if you picked it up as part of PS Plus's free games for October 2024. And that is Platinum 130. On the horizon is Silent Hill 2 Remake, Doki Doki Literature Club, and maybe something a little older. I'm not completely sure yet. If you've made it this far, send me some feedback with either the thumb up or thumb down button, and let me know your thoughts on the Dead Space trophy list. Thanks for watching, happy hunting, and GG.